This is an overview of the Design Thinking for Educators reading that we've had you do over this last week, or that's going to occur over this week. Basically, this Design Thinking for Educators document that you're looking at is a broad but also fairly detailed look at the process of design tailored towards educators. So it's meant to bring the design process into the realm of education. Educators design curriculum, learning experiences, environments, and more, and this process is meant to guide your thinking in the way that a designer would. There are 5 steps that we'll go into in a little bit more detail as we go through this presentation, but they basically include discovery, interpretation, ideation, experimentation, and evolution. And these 5 stages occur on a trajectory that takes you from the start to the finish of the project, basically from the point where you define your project or your problem and you take it through to the evolution of the design. So as we move forward, we think about why this toolkit. There's a lot of different design toolkits. There's a lot of different ways to define the different steps of design and think about what's important in design phases. But we thought that these 5 stages map fairly nicely onto common activities of design work and what actual designers do. It was created by IDEO, a well-known design firm, and specifically for educational context. There's a lot out there about design in the arts, design in engineering, design in the business world, but we like the fact that this includes educational context and how teachers and other educators and other educational stakeholders could think about design in their work. These 5 stages will also map well into important phases of your own design project and own problem of practice this fall. So this toolkit document is going to focus on descriptions and activities that make up each of the 5 stages, or 5 phases I should say, either way, to get a sense of each. So within each of those 5 phases of discovery through evolution, the document includes a lot of smaller steps and activities that will help you guide through the process of design. And also as you're reading it, take a look at the case studies because they give a sense of how the process and how these different phases actually occur in a much more real and less abstract sense. You can get a sense of what it's actually like to be designing for education using these steps. So the biggest challenge is actually where you start from and identifying your problem. A lot of you have already started to think about this, which is great. And it goes back to that recognition versus perception idea that we talked a little bit about on the forum this week. The discovery phase is the first phase of design work in this PDF document. And that's basically where you think about your design challenge, define your problem, and think about how you're going to approach it. So this is where you need to be as detailed as you can be at this phase about problem definition. Once you've decided on the topic, the problem that you're going to tackle, what is it that you know about it? How well can you define it in terms at this early stage? And also you want to think about what you don't know about it. So how are you going to tackle it? How are you going to gather more information and research? So discovery is really a learning phase where you've defined a problem and you gather more information. So for this phase in the larger context of your assignment to your Applying Design Thinking project, you should, and there's more information on the website about this in the assignment 2 page, but you should create a minimum of a page of design notes that will include a description of your problem of practice, defined as well as you can. How do you plan to approach it? What do you already know about it and what do you not know about it? So what do you need to learn about it and how are you going to gather more information and research? Are you going to do observations? Are you going to gather more information through more traditional research means on the web or books? How are you going to learn more about it? The interpretation phase is after discovery. Now you know that you've learned something. How is it that you interpret what you've learned? You've gathered information, you've defined your problem, so now you need to look for meanings and apply meaning to the things that you've learned. You'll look for relevant themes and things that will be applicable to the ultimate solution of your design work. For the interpretation phase, in terms of your project work this semester, you want to prepare a short report, again a minimum of 1 page, on the meaning of what you learned. So this is essentially the evolution of your notes. Phase 1 of discovery was where you created design notes that defined your problem. that talked about how you're going to approach it and how you're going to gather more information and research. For the interpretation phase, you're going to evolve this information into a place where you have come up with some relevant themes and you've started to come up with insights and ideas and consider how we might move forward with this next problem to the next phase. Ideation is the phase where we begin to brainstorm. So you've seen a challenge, you've laid it out, you've learned more information about it, so now you want to think about what do I create, and you need to come up with ideas for this. So this is the phase where we brainstorm, generate ideas, and then ultimately refine them down. So it's good at this phase if you can defer any judgments on ideas. There are actually no bad ideas at this point. And just we encourage you to come up with as many as you can. You're going to do a brainstorm activity with other people in your group and come up with as many ideas as you can for yourself and as a group and build on the ideas of other people. Ideation phase in terms of your own assignment 2 project going through the semester. At this phase, you will begin to prepare for and conduct this focused brainstorm section. So we'll give you more information about it, but you're going to set up a brainstorm session with your group of 4 people and come up with a lot of ideas, as many as you can. Then you'll refine them down and decide on what you want to pursue. So what you'll actually be submitting for this is a written record, a minimum of a page and a half on that session. You'll describe how it went, you'll document the things that arose during this session, both in the form of narrative or description discussion of what came out of the session, the ideas that arose, and which ones you decide are important and relevant. And also if you've come up with any visuals, it's good to come up with images and sketches at this point, or if you've created a bunch of post-it notes or you're working on a whiteboard and you can take a quick picture of that. Images or sketches or visuals are very useful at this point and would be a good thing to include in your written record. At the end of that written record, you want to include a concrete description of your idea. This doesn't mean that it has to be a total final set in stone idea, but you want to be able to thoroughly talk about the idea that you came up with that you want to pursue. And you can still consider it to be flexible going forward. At the experimentation phase, you're going to think about the fact that, okay, now you have your idea, a pretty decent general idea of how you want to see this design through. So now you think about, how do I build that? And this phase of the game is usually one that involves making prototypes and getting feedback. So this is where you make your ideas a reality, and building a prototype means making your ideas tangible, but that doesn't mean that you have to create a finished product here. You just have to create something that in some way actualizes your design and gives other people a fairly clear sense of how it'll work and how it'll look and feel. Even with early prototypes, it's a good time to get feedback and decide how you can further improve and refine an idea. And at this phase of the game in your semester-long project, you'll be actually creating a prototype and getting feedback. What this actual prototype looks like will vary a lot from person to person because, as you can imagine, you're all probably going to be tackling fairly different types of design problems. Some of you may be designing or redesigning processes. Some of you may want to actually design something like an application or redesign a course. So you'll just want to think about what types of deliverables would you include in this type of a prototype. So like here are a few examples on this slide, but if it's a course design, what are some important deliverables for that design? Syllabus, assignments, lessons, a descriptive plan, just basically anything that will tell someone looking at it how that course will run, what it's about, what are the important pieces of it. Same thing with like if it's a professional development program, what things would you need for that? Activities, aims, handouts, a schedule, any other learning deliverables. So again, experimentation phase and prototypes vary a lot. It doesn't mean that you have to actually build a physical concrete model, but you need to be able to put together some tangible deliverables that help give a sense of what this design looks like, how it works, if it's a process, how it'll go, all of that. The evolution phase is really the final phase of design, and I say final, but it's very much an ongoing phase. We'll only have a few weeks to capture it here, but you'll want to think about, okay, now I've created something, and how do I evolve it? So you're going to move your design forward from this initial template that you've created so far. And during evolution, you'll be evaluating what you've learned about this prototype and this process from the feedback phase. And then you'll consider how to build the experience going forward. Your actual work for this phase and what you'll turn in, what you'll submit for the evolution phase, is that you'll create a written plan for the evolution of your project. Again, a minimum of a page. More if you like, more if you need to. That will basically be a sorting through of the feedback that you've gotten, because you'll be describing and discussing your prototype and your design with your group and in class. So you'll gather feedback from those experiences and describe in this written plan what feedback that you want to include, and you can discard what's not useful at that point. You'll also need to define your criteria for success. So what are the things that will make your design useful over time? What are the things that you'll need to know? What are the things that you need to do? What are the pieces that need to be in place to make it something that you feel will be useful and that you could actually put out into the world? You'll also need to identify the resources needed to build your project. So this isn't obviously a final design, but if you were going to think about how this was something that you were going to put out in the world, what would be the resources that you need? What would be the human resources? What would be the actual physical resources, the knowledge resources? What types of things would be needed if you were going to actually build this? You'll also need to just describe how you would pitch this concept and who. Design is always done for an audience, so you want to think about how you would sell that design and that concept to an audience, or how you would interest them and show that it's something of value. And then from there, just any planning of your next steps going forward. So for the putting it all together, basically at this point you will have gone through all of the 5 phases of design discussed in the design toolkit. And you'll want to, for the final project due at the end of the semester, you're going to want to just put it all together and have essentially a synthesis of all the previous steps. So that'll mean putting all of those 5 deliverables together and also refining, adding to, revising at this point anything that you want to in those 5 pieces, and then including a final summation at the end of what you see your design work as being about, how it went, just a final summation to kind of tie it all together. And then we'll have time in the final class period for everyone to give a short presentation, 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes or so, to reveal your design to the world. And when we say also plus a design document that pulls together your entire semester-long work, that's essentially what I just described, the 5 pieces pulled together and revised or added to along with the summation. So taking this toolkit into your actual design project, as you can see, the stages and these 5 phases covered will map pretty closely onto how you'll work through this project over the semester. We do have some checkpoints set up throughout the semester where we'll talk about each phase of the project. So we didn't want to overwhelm you with too much information all at once. It sounds like a lot, it sounds like a huge project, but we'll do it in pieces and in stages. You can see on the assignment 2 page, the Applying Design Thinking to a Problem of Practice page on the website, that there will be dates where you'll have certain deliverables due, so that by the time you get to the end of the semester, all of the pieces will really be in place to just kind of put it together and present it. For right now, as you approach the toolkit and thinking about it, reading it, learning about these phases, you'll want to look through it a couple of times. We'd suggest skimming it through broadly once because there's a lot in there and you'll want to get a good sense of how these 5 phases break down in this big long document. Then go back through and pay attention to what happens at each stage. So there's smaller activities for each of the 5 phases, like in the ideation phase that will include a brainstorm session, refining your ideas, gathering a little bit of preliminary feedback. So there's a lot of little pieces that go into that, and you don't need to necessarily do every single one of those little pieces, but it's good to have a good sense of how it goes overall so that you can take what's useful and generally speaking complete each of the 5 phases over the semester. Then you'll think about, as you're reading, how this translates to the project that you're considering at each phase. So as you consider how to find a project, there's just a few criteria that we'd suggest that you think about. A lot of you already have a good project in mind, which is great. try to think about something that would connect with you as a professional. So design work is always most important when it's something that's relevant, something that's meaningful to the designer and to an actual audience. And you want to think about having something that can be improved by this design approach. So make sure as you have your idea in mind that it's something that as you look at these phases of design, there's something that would apply to your project. And the turn of phrase from the first class, pick a battle big enough to matter and small enough to win. So it's something basically that's relevant and important, but small enough to be feasible and something that you can actually tackle. For your own project, again, consider the smaller activities that occur at each phase of design. As they're noted in the toolkit, that doesn't mean that you have to do each of those smaller sub-phases directly, but they give you a good sense of how each design phase works and how the whole process rolls from beginning to end. And how would you approach them in the context of your own project? And again, we're just going to work through this through the whole semester, and you'll just begin this week by understanding the process in the reading. And with that, we just want to say happy design thinking. We're really looking forward to hearing more about your projects and what you think about the toolkit and the phases of design. We hope it will be useful to you in your work this semester and going forward. Thank you.